Hey guys, so yeah, this is the ministry based questions video, and so the first question is where do we feel like we have missed God's leading or His direction? And we both kind of feel that we've missed it when it comes to certain friendships and relationships. We allowed kind of like things outside of the relationships to um, allow that relationship to fall apart, not fall apart in like a negative, but to fall away. And because of that, we didn't follow through with those relationships. We didn't, deepen those relationships, and because of that, we definitely feel that we missed
Opportunity.
that opportunity. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So the next question is, what is the typical response of non-Christians to the work we do, specifically concerning anti-human trafficking?
So I think the best way to explain this, I mean, there are some people in the entire world, even some Christians, I guess, that think that prostitution is good for women and it furthers one's rights. And so I have had that conversation. We both have had that conversation with people before that ask us, like, those kind of questions about what about if the woman isn't being trafficked? How do you feel about that? And all that kind of stuff. But one of, I think, the coolest things that has happened through having that conversation with non-Christians is one of our good friends. I've had that conversation. She asked me, like, if you could completely guarantee that none of these women were being trafficked, none of them had pimps, they were doing it by themselves, would you still want prostitution to end? And I told her yes. And from those conversations, I've been able to explain more why and my reasoning. And she was over for Thanksgiving, actually, and informed us that the day before in her language class, that had actually been their topic of discussion, was prostitution and legalizing it, all this stuff. And she was willing to stand up to her teacher and everyone else in the class who was defending it and saying why. And she stood up and said, no, I have a friend who knows these women and knows the situation. And I know that this is not right now because I have learned and I have listened and I have heard. And she, for like an hour, defended the truth of what we have seen. And it was just so cool to hear that and hear like how her view has shifted and the fact that she was willing to learn that and to stand up for what she now knew was right. It was really cool.
Yeah, and I think majority of people too, they're, when we tell them, like outreach and that kind of stuff, like they are like, oh man, like that's really good that you're doing that. That's really nice. That's really honorable that you're doing that. And I feel like that's more often the response than, well, that's a waste of time, you know? Yeah. So the next question is, so how do we approach sharing the gospel with the women? So specifically you, because I don't really have contact with the women.
Yes. So this was a question I thought was really good because the fact is we share the gospel with the women the way we'd share the gospel with anyone in a lot of ways. We, especially if I think specifically about like Wednesday nights out on the streets or Tuesday nights when I go into the brothels, it is a little bit more. You have to be very aware of your surroundings and who else could be listening into the conversation. But it's actually the reason we're able to have these conversations and go into the brothels is because they see us as church ladies. They know we are coming in as Christians, and that is why we have come to talk with them, why we've come to give them these gifts and just love on them. They are well aware that we are Christians and we love Jesus, and that's why we're there. And so that kind of opens up the gates to, as they're telling us these awful stories, to be able to be like, bring Jesus into that situation and ask if we can pray about them, ask what they know about Jesus, and share in that way. So it's very similar to how you would share it with anyone that you start a conversation with. You hear their stories and you share God's love. pray for them. And
Yep.
yeah.
The next question, how do we stay motivated and focused? And this one, I mean, yeah, it's hard sometimes, but I think that the relationships that we make is what helps us stay focused, because we have such great friends and we have these great relationships, and, our heart is to see Christ transform their lives and, for them to begin to follow Christ. And so that's what keeps us focused. And then, I mean, when it comes to, the personal relationships, but like that's the same mindset even with the women, is because our heart for them and, our obedience to God. And then, just how we stay, I think, motivated is through, a daily active relationship with Christ, reading scripture through prayer, just through all that, just making sure, and obviously we're not perfect. We don't do it perfectly all the time. But, our goal, our desire is to be as spiritually healthy as possible so that then we are able to, and we do have the capacity to pour ourselves out in our relationships. And then the last question, we kind of already answered it a bit in the life question, but I think this is just...
in the life video.
But this is something we both are has been on our mind lately. And it's our fears for 2020. So coming back in 2020, the fears that we have.
I think our biggest fear is now in all the prayer and the discussion we've had with each other and with other people, we kind of have a vision for what we want our focus to be, what ministry we see lacking, or what ministries we see lacking, just ways we want to encourage anti-human trafficking work and other works in the city, and we have this vision, but in a year a lot can change. So it's kind of the fear that we're going to return and the need will be completely different, and we'll have to start kind of back from complete square one after a year of because this year in the States is going to be kind of working towards these ideas and these things that God has laid on our hearts. And so to come back after that year in 2020 and have to start at square one again is kind of daunting, but we're going to do what God asks us to do. So if that's what ends up happening, we'll praise him that that thing has been taken care of, if that's what happens, and be ready and open to do what else opens up. So
Okay.
yeah.
Bye.
Bye.